All right, what's up, everybody? This is Cody Johnson again here with Chapel Hill Training, and we are back with episode number 3 of the Fitlosophies podcast. I've got a very special guest today here to talk about more gaining confidence in the way that Chapel Hill Training displays this and utilizes these techniques in our business management system. As we talked about last time, we talked a lot about anxiety and how it presents itself as a client, as a business owner, as a manager, or as an employee. And one of the things that I touched on a lot in last week was the ability to gain confidence in oneself or oneself ability to finish an action or complete an action using repetition. And today we'll be utilizing that to kind of talk about the ways in which my business itself has struggled with confidence, whether that's just me or the kind of way I view my business or the way the business views its employees and its staff, and how I've kind of overcome those obstacles in a way to promote a less anxious workforce and hopefully provide a better and more quality service through very strict analysis and discussion and open conversations and transparency. So I hope you guys are up for a decent listen and conversation today. Hopefully I will provide you guys with some Fitlosophies and some things to think about in your own businesses and your own employment. So without further ado, let's start it off. Like I talked about in the opening there, we have discussed anxiety and its many causes, right? I think one time of the year where people probably see the most, maybe outside of holidays, depending on your own personal self, is going to be the beginning of the year, because there's a lot of criticism and a lot of critical thinking that comes into setting new goals, setting new boundaries, or the way that you look and you view your past self and how you're going to improve upon that person, right? A lot of times I think when it comes to anxiety, if we wanted to break down an avenue that it often presents itself is through feelings of inadequacy. And that can be caused either through a lack of advancement or validation, maybe not getting enough feedback, maybe you're getting too much feedback. In the working world, it might be because you feel like you're not secure enough in your finances or the things that you're capable of doing. Maybe you're working too much and you're focusing too much time on the things that professionally are growing you and not enough on what's personally growing you, or vice versa, right? And there are a lot of things that come into play with that. I think when discussing this from the framework of gaining confidence or maybe having a lack of confidence, I think this comes and goes for a lot of people. Like, I don't think this is something that is like omnipresent, like constantly throughout the year. But I think ultimately people will feel like this at least once or twice throughout the beginning or throughout the entirety of the year. But I think ultimately, especially at the beginning of the year when they're being tested a little bit more. And at Chapel Hill Training, I think I've gone through a ton of iterations of this. I think now that I've got Anna here next to me, she'll probably chime in here at some point with this before we get to kind of her more personal stuff. But I've definitely gone through my fair share. I mean, there's ups and downs. There are times throughout the year when I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'll look at like all of the plans I have for the year. I'll look at maybe our budget and if we're sticking close to that, or have I instituted the right policies and the changes and all the stuff that I wanted to at the beginning of the year, and just be like, no. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not doing these things, am I still doing a good job? And I think it's really hard as a business owner sometimes to quantify that when you don't give yourself a lot of feedback. And so my first kind of thing to throw out there for everyone is if you feel like you are kind of just treading water, you're not doing a whole lot with your business or what you're doing, or maybe you're an employee and you feel like you're not continuing your career enough, and that's kind of providing you some of this like workplace anxiety, start evaluating yourself. Or use the tools of your business, whether, whatever it is, their management style, or whatever has you, start evaluating yourself through that lens, or have someone else evaluate you through that lens, and be open to that feedback and that transparency. Because I think that's going to give you a lot of the validation that you're missing, or a lot of the validation that you need in order to say like, yeah, I'm not doing a good enough job. And now I recognize this and someone else is telling me, and they're giving me that reinforcement that I need to go through that. So I think when I had a couple business partners, one of the things that I guess more critically speaking on them was a lot of the feedback that I always got from them was like, you're doing a great job. And not to say that that's a bad thing, like, right? Because I mean, in actuality, it's good, right? It means like, hey, you're doing all the right things. Yeah. But I'm a very like growth mindset person. And also I am kind of a perfectionist, which I've said a couple of times on this podcast before and in the blogs, right? So just being told that it's good or you're doing great isn't good enough. Like I want things to be so good that it's undeniable how great it is. And I think that people would often back that mindset of mine. Like if they if I had just said this sentence and someone listening to this knows me, they're probably like, wow, like, yeah, that ticks that box. That's why like Cody put so much effort in this, or that's why you can always kind of see his brain thinking through, whatever it is he's got to do, or that he's like thinking about some random thing. And he's like, hey, what if I just did this, while I'm in the middle of like a heavy squat? I don't actually do that. I'm paying attention to my clients, I swear. But my brain's constantly going about how I can best improve either myself or my business or whatever. And it was hard to kind of sit there and take criticism that did not, validate the very real criticisms of myself that I had. And not to say that that's not, that I need people to be critical of me. I don't necessarily need that, but I needed someone to take the same level of criticism and care that I was taking into things and give me that feedback. And so what I ended up having to do was build that for myself, right? And building that was, came through a lot more strict goal setting. It came through a lot more like objective measures. And then it also came from subjective stuff. Like I started asking my staff, like, how do you guys think I'm doing? Like beyond just like, are you, like we're getting enough business, right? It kind of came down to like, hey, like I need to evaluate myself based on how you feel about your job. So like, how are you doing in your job? How do you feel like management is backing you? Am I doing enough stuff for you? Am I providing enough career advancement and those kind of things? And I think that was a really hard thing in process to go through. But ultimately, I think it was one of the best things I've done for myself within the business in terms of just overall gaining confidence. Because I wouldn't say, I would argue that as far as like being a business owner, I was nowhere near as confident as I am now until after COVID. And part of the reason was because COVID gave me a really good chance to really have to bust my ass in a way that I hadn't before. But also there was very real feedback to be had from clients and staff alike, because nothing was the same. I mean, for lack of using a Drake lyric, nothing was everything was gonna be different, right? Like there was nothing that was stable at that time. And so basically it came down to whether or not I could lead us through this thing and whether or not I was doing the right things. And the only way to do that was to get constant feedback. And I would say that was probably the time I grew the most as a business owner. And one of the times our business grew the most was because we got that valuable feedback. So from a career advancement point, kind of talking about this, one of the things that I see with a lot of our new trainers and staff are just that they come in when they start and they are unsure of themselves. And I think that has presented itself through the lens of anxiety a lot, right? If you don't really know what you're doing, it's really hard to feel confident in something. And it's really easy to let those feelings slide in and feel like you're not enough or that you are inadequate at your job. And I think when working in personal training or the fitness industry, and we work in an industry where things change a lot, you're constantly getting different research that is completely disregarding former research or completely overturning it. You are right in front of people every single day. Like it's very easy to make a mistake and to recognize that mistake. And you're also working alongside, here, if you're new, you're working alongside like myself and Anna, a couple other people have been doing this for over a decade. And we're very confident and very good at our jobs. And if you come in and you're right next to them and you're like, am I as good as them? Like, probably not. But like, the point isn't that maybe you aren't. The point is we got to find a way to get you there. And one of the things that I did a couple years ago was actually elevate Anna to a new position that we created, which was the staff development coordinator. And her whole role was creating opportunity and advancement through our tier system in a way that was going to help people gain confidence and start seeing those objective measures and feedback that they could use to improve. And I've seen that do a really, really, really good job with our staff in terms of building confidence, but also I would argue in reducing workplace anxiety overall and reducing anxiety in the way that people view their career advancement. So like I said before, finally getting to it, I've got a guest here. Her name is Anna. She is our staff development coordinator, and she is here to kind of talk about her job, how to get people to gain confidence and what that looks like.
So I guess like originally I started as kind of more of like a general manager-ish. Mm-hmm. And then Cody and I figured out that instead of kind of doubling up on certain job duties, it was better just having me just focus on like training and coaching the trainers themselves. And so that's where like it came from working. So in the beginning, what it took a lot of was meeting with the trainers one-on-one. A lot of like development meetings just between me and them. It was really interesting. And I needed to kind of figure out, as it wasn't just generally managing them now I was trying to focus on like developing them as a staff member specifically. And so it took a long time of just meeting with them one-on-one to figure out where to even take our staff development meetings as a team, like what to even do. And it felt like after it took about a year, right, to like really get it going and everybody headed in the right direction, that like we really started getting into it. I had to give them constant evaluation. Some people I met with once a week in order to do that. Some people I met with once a month. And then it kind of ended up being more of like once a month as like a check-in and then once a quarter. But it was asking them like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do with like your career? What do you like focusing on? What do you feel like you're missing when you're training? Like, how do you think you can help your clients better? And then from that going, okay, well, we have holes here, here, and here. And as a team, like these kind of all are the similar. And so let's focus on this area of our training to develop and elevate all of our training as a team. And then a one-on-one, we can keep kind of getting into these really specific things. So that's kind of how my position came to be. It has been really interesting because I've had most of my trainers have varying levels of anxiety. Like I think all of them do, right? Yeah. And like all of them have varying levels of anxiety, but like most of them I think would be on the more anxious end of the spectrum. I think that they like personal training because they are working one-on-one with someone. And that's why we're not group fitness instructors. That's not why we coach or do anything else that involves large group of people. Like we just like meeting with people one-on-one. Most of us are introverts too. And so that social anxiety plays like a large role in what we do. And they function a lot better when they're with someone. When they have to like go in front of a group, you can tell the majority of our trainers get like really nervous about the whole thing.
Super nervous.
Super nervous about the whole, every single time. And so it's interesting because it's like you're developing their skills as a trainer to like get them to have more confidence in what they're doing, because our whole industry is based on like your confidence as a trainer. Your confidence as a trainer keeps your clients, gets your clients, it helps you. And then like confidence begets confidence and it just keeps going. So if you don't have the confidence in the beginning, and I realize I've said confidence like 20 times now, but if you don't have it in the beginning, then you're never going to be able to fake your clients into thinking that like you have it. Not that we're faking it. We know what we're doing, but it's like they have to believe that you have the skills and the value to bring to their life. And if you can't display that, if you can't at least fake it to, even if you don't feel it on the inside, you never get anywhere. And then those are the trainers that I see fizzle out. And so it's like my job is to try to boost them up enough to say like, hey, you know that you know your stuff and that you can do it. And that, you know, and if you have a problem with your client, bring it to me. We'll figure it out. And like, I have to sometimes sit there a lot and work and problem solve with trainers on specific clients to make sure that they feel confident that they're helping that person, that client, and not hurting them.
For sure.
And then, from there, it's really, then it's just developing their interpersonal skills. And that stuff is like a lot harder and a lot more long-term.
Yeah, for sure. I think all of that is very true and right on brand with what we do. And I think in the grand scheme, there's a few things that Anna mentioned that I think we probably should talk about a little bit deeper. And the first one is, you touched on a little bit with newer trainers coming in. And I want to kind of back up a little bit and look at the overview of personal training as a career. I would say it's not until the last, this is conjecture, but I would say it's not until the last 15-ish years, 20-ish years, where personal training has been looked at as something that can be a career. I think it's mostly been looked at as a job and as something in which you're going to do for a short amount of time. Anecdotally speaking, I remember when I had a conversation with my brother, I have a twin brother, for those of you that don't know, and I was maybe a year and a half out of college at this time, and my brother's finishing up his 5th year. And I remember talking to him just about my job and, you know, talking about his job prospects and what he was going to be doing. And he was going into recruiting as far as like staff recruiting and staffing. And he was really excited about what he was going to start doing as his career and go from there. And one of the things he said was like, well, what are you going to do? Like, I mean, you're just doing a job, right? Like, what are you going to do after you personal train? And the weird part was like, I hadn't really thought about that in per se, because I just assumed like, yeah, I'm going to be like a fitness professional for, I don't know, as long as I want to, I guess, right? Maybe forever, right? And so I think it's been interesting here, like when we get to people, you know, my goal with chapel training overall is to be able to create careers for people, not necessarily just something that you're going to do for part-time. And with that, I think that you really need that developmental quality of like your staff in order to like get them confident enough that they can do this. You also, one thing that we haven't necessarily talked about here, but as a business owner, that also means I've got to be really good at client acquisition, and like in a way that I can get people and stay here and keep them here in an environment that they love long term. And that takes a really, really good qualified staff that I think Anna has done great on. But I'll have her chime in here. Like, do you agree with the like statement on career versus job?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was really like just around the time that maybe right before we graduated college. Like I'm a couple years older than Cody. So like 2010 to 15 that it really started becoming like an actual career path.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say that's also the big push when like NASM and the other big like sort of started like going to colleges and partnering with them and be like, yeah, you guys can do this like as a career. So, I mean, that gets us into a whole nother debate on where we see ourselves in healthcare and all that other stuff. But, you know, this isn't necessarily about that, but I think there is definitely a conversation later on in this podcast to be had about our
it's a profession. It's not just like a side job.
Exactly. Yeah. And so just like any other profession, this is why I have Anna, you know, leading this. Just like any profession, you need career advancement. And you can't really do that if people aren't confident enough to try and climb that ladder. So that's what we've really done. The secondary thing, I think, if let's do, this is going to be a fun one, I think, to talk about, at least for me. So one of the things that Anna also touched on is getting people used to being confident. Like it takes a lot of iteration. You got to talk through things enough. You got to problem solve enough. And I would argue that most people coming out of college or just starting personal training just haven't had to do that yet. They haven't been in a position where there's just right in front of somebody for the next, 30 to 60 minutes and all their attention is on this individual. You're basically public speaking, but you're also real-time problem solving a lot of times, depending on somebody's movement pattern.
And you're teaching.
Right? And you're teaching in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's a good
You're
good
really educating people. Like you have to be like a tutor, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a lot of different regards. But yeah, you're definitely teaching people. And so one of the things that I do, and I think Anna does this as well, when we interview people, we grill them. And by we grill them, I grill them. I grill people pretty hard, and it's not for that whole reason that people would generally think. I think if you guys all know that, like, I played college football and trained for the NFL and all these things, you'd be like, oh, he's grilling people to break them down, because if you break somebody down, you can build them up stronger, right? No, absolutely not. I'm more trying to function, right?
Under stress.
I'm trying to see how, what people know. And also it apply just a little bit of stress that they're going to feel at the job when they first start. I mean, like, I remember my first day going into personal training. I had done internships, I had done all these things, and I was still so nervous because it was my first time going in to like work with somebody one-on-one. Like, it was my first day on the job and I didn't want to make a mistake. I wanted to make sure my programming was right and all these racing thoughts and stuff. And the only person I had to rely on in that specific moment, I mean, it wasn't true, but the only person I had to rely on was like myself at that point, because it's really hard to just go grab someone and be like, hey, can you answer this question for my client real fast? Because I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, that's not going to go over really well, like from like a sales tactic or anything like that when you're working with people. And so I want to know what people know. And the only way to know that is to ask them questions and have them explain why, and have them explain stuff that they maybe haven't yet. But also in a way where they're not going to immediately know if they were right or not. Like, one of the things I think I do well in interviews is I don't tell people like off the gate if their answer was correct or not. This is probably something that maybe like all the staff, if you guys are listening to this, or former staff or anyone that's ever interviewed, that the light bulbs are going off in your head, because you're like, wow, yeah, he didn't tell me if I was right or not until the end of the interview. And I don't, because I have to know if you know. Like, you're talking to another expert, right? And I should know all the things that you know. You hopefully will know a lot of the things that I know as well. And in order to do that, that means there's got to be a lot of assumptions that are being made. And if all you're doing is guessing in the interview, it's going to be pretty easy to tell. And I don't want to have guessers around here. I want to have people that know what they're talking about. So I think when it comes to like training people, we also kind of do this. Like Anna, I think, is really good at getting people to getting people the right answers, but I think we have a pretty good dynamic. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that actually does well. Like getting people, in my opinion, I think part of teaching is teaching people how to find answers without having someone to just tell them. And I think Anna and I both do a really good job of that.
That's definitely like a big part of it, is that like the research is so continuously changing. I mean, new studies come out every single month. And it's like there's also so many different schools of thought about training. And there's a lot of the answers are, it depends. And so you have to have an analytical mind enough to be able to sort through all of the garbage and the real like meaty like facts out there and figure out, in this specific situation, how do I apply what I know? And that's where like being a personal trainer has like a certain art to it. And you have to have enough confidence in your own analysis to say, like, I can put all this together and execute it and explain it to my client why I'm doing that. And at the end of the day, feel good about my decision. Yeah. And I mean, that's a pretty mature thing to have to do as like maybe like a fresh out of school 22-year-old. Like that's a lot of different layers of something you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I don't expect young people to be able to do that. I think the only reason why I was able to do it as well as I was is because I came from like sports, dance, like theater background. My personality type, I TA'd anatomy and physiology in undergrad. And so like it was easy to kind of add those things up, but someone with the same background, like it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so you have to also like be mindful as a manager of your employees that they're not coming from the same space. They didn't have the same privilege that you had and like what you were, your experiences prior to. And you're asking a lot of someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Like,
yeah, I think I think that is the sentence right there as far as like most people concerned. Like when you get into personal training and you're starting a job, you're asking a whole lot of that individual. And they have to shoulder a lot of responsibility, like all at one time.
Yeah, it's scary. Especially if you're also working with a population of people that could be injured or elderly. Like you're so concerned about not wanting to hurt someone. Like there's so many different things running in the back of your brain.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you have to be like, and I'm here, and I'm confident, and I'm definitely right. You can trust me. I'm right.
Yes,
and like,
it's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of just building people up in a way that gets their confidence going. What would you say is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle, I guess, for a team like we have, like employees, and trying to get them to like the next step?
I think that it is the trust in your teammates and building up that trust. Because if you know that you don't have the answer to something, or you know that you have a team that's watching you and can possibly step to the side and help you out if you're floundering or whatever it is, like you feel so much less anxiety when you're at work, is you have you have your team to back you up, like that your management team, that your other teammates, like you're not there as competition to them, but you're there to help each other out.
Right.
That was a huge issue that we had in the beginning, and we had to do those team building worksheets to try to make that happen.
For sure. Yeah. So for those of you who are not employees here, and have not heard of us, so one of the things we try and do is function as a team in a lot of aspects, whether that is getting like our cleaning duties done, programming for clients sometimes, or problem solving on certain things. The goal has never been that you get here and you're on an island and now you're your own trainer and nothing else matters. It's always come in with the fact of like, once you're here, you're part of the group, like you're one of us, and we're going to help you wherever we need to. And that means answering some questions or giving you insight that you maybe don't know, or empowering you to do the things that are going to help you in your career. And I think Anna's right when she says like one of the hardest things we had was redefining and redeveloping that atmosphere. This first part's going to sound, hopefully it doesn't sound harsh, but we hired a lot of new people at once. And not to say it was any singular, all of the new people's problems that came in on the team. It wasn't. It was that we now basically doubled our staff size in a very short amount of time, like coming right out of COVID. And so there was a lot of, a lot of new personalities at work, and a lot of like workflow things that we had to get used to and adjust. And on the back end, like kind of outside of that, I was trying to figure out how to run the business with like twice as many people. And so at one point, I think this was at this point about a year and 5 months ago, a year and 6 months
Fall
ago.
of 2023.
Yeah, we had a come to Jesus meeting. So we had a very real down to earth talk regarding kind of what needed to happen, what needed to change in order for us to continue to grow. And the first part of that is understanding what the business goals are, and being able to kind of bring those to the staff and say, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how it's important, and this is how it's going to impact you. And then the second piece of that was, given these things, these are the attributes that I need from you guys. This is the step-by-step processes that I need you guys to do. These are your responsibilities, and this is a job. And like, you need to figure out how to get these done. Like, I'm going to give you the step-by-step thing. If that is not working, then we're going to have a very long talk about why it's not working, because this is where we need to be at. And I kind of challenged Anna in one of our meetings to say, hey, we need to figure out how we can get people to better work with one another, and how we can get people to talk to one another. And build
that comes back to that feedback thing from the beginning, is that you, because we function independently all day long, it's easy to believe that you are an independent contractor or whatever, and that you're not a part of a team. But that's not true. We have to work around each other in synergy all day long, especially in this kind of like small studio type environment. And so getting people to give each other feedback, honest feedback, was like the hardest thing I've ever done. It's so interesting, because I think back to like being in a dance company and like how cutthroat, like everybody could just be and just give each other feedback. Our staff, they're like so like compassionate and empathetic. Like they would not like give each other feedback like at all. It was really funny. It was
really difficult.
It was literally pulling teeth. Yeah. And so we had to like come up with these dumb worksheets.
Whoa,
okay.
They were not dumb.
They were not dumb.
But here, to be fair to the
they were
if
very
I was
important.
An employee, my first thought would be like, wow, yeah, that's dumb.
Yes, exactly.
But from a management perspective,
it was beautiful. Yeah. But
it's funny how things change when you're at the top, guys.
But I'm sure the staff was like, this feels like kindergarten.
And it did a little bit.
But we had to make them give each other both like constructive and positive feedback. Like, and it was really hard.
It was really hard. It's really hard. So for everyone listening here, one of the things that you can do for yourself, obviously, is give yourself critical feedback. But I think when Anna and I were discussing how best to go about this, one of the things that we both touched on was our educational backgrounds, as well as our sports and activities background. And one of the things at least in education wise, I had a teacher in high school who had us do peer review for all of our papers, multiple rounds before we were able to submit a paper. And what she did the very first time, our very first paper we turned in after we did a peer review, was she eviscerated the hell out of us. She took all of our papers, and these were all high achieving kids. Like, we were all like AP students. And this was probably the first time that we had really been challenged in a class in this way. And one of the things that she did was she tore us to shreds, and she let us know, like, hey, your classmates did not give you the proper feedback. And that was right? Like, we had gone through multiple different of our classmates who, had looked at our paper and said, no, that's good. Like, that's fine. That's good enough. And then we turn it in and we realize, wow, this paper sucked. And the point of that was being good enough and being willing to give people honest criticism. And I think that as far as accountability goes, and as far as building confidence, that first time that you fail, or that you feel like you have to talk about something that way, you're letting somebody down, you're not good enough, and you're having those inadequacy feelings, the first time you feel that hurts. Like, it does not feel very good. The second time you feel it, though, doesn't hurt quite as much. The third time that you feel it and you hear it, you're like, wow, yeah, like, actually there's something to this, and it's improving every time, probably because I'm improving, right? If you take that criticism to heart and you work on the things that you need to, you then become better at what you're doing. And I think a lot of people have missed that aspect of accountability, whether they haven't been in
or just
area long enough,
self-development,
or that period of self-development. And that was one of the things, like with education at least, but then also playing sports. If you play sports and you suck at your position, you're not going to last very long quickly in that position. And you're going to know very quickly, because whoever is on your team with you is going to tell you, like, hey, you're not doing good enough, and I need you to do this. Like, I will like, my brother played, again, talking about my brother here, my brother played center back and I played left back. We played for a very good soccer team growing up. It's horrible having your brother as your teammate, but also your team captain, because he has to boss you around all the time, and he took great pleasure in that. But it was really easy to know, right? Because I would know, like, I'm a very self-critical person. I would know when I'm making a mistake.
Yeah.
But knowing that I was letting other people down felt horrible. And I never wanted to do that. But it took, in those aspects, it took me taking feedback from them to understand, like, this is how I get better at this. This is what I need from you. And that was a big part of those worksheets, is we literally asked our staff to talk to each other about, what do you feel good about at work? What do you not feel good about at work? And to preface all this saying, we didn't listen to these conversations. Like, this was not a conversation that staff were having in front of Anna and I.
No, these were like, they were having private little small group conversations.
They were having their own small group conversations, 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 or whatever, with each other. And the point was, we need you guys to take this seriously, because when you have conversations with us, like, we know how you're feeling, but you guys can have each other to rely on. I think it's important to create a culture at your company in which case employees feel like they can rely on each other, and that they can go to somebody as a confidant when they need to in certain things. Like, if someone wants to criticize me that's an employee, go for it. All you want to. Like, and it can be just as you walked in, you're having a crappy day, and then I'm like, hey, you forgot to do this, and you just like explode, right? Because that was just the extra thing that threw you over. And it's really hard to want to be able to do that. But if it makes you feel better to go and yell at me, and go commiserate with another staff member because, like, you're having a bad day, by all means, you should do that. And you have every right to do that. And that's perfectly fine. Like, that doesn't affect me. I know I'm the boss. Like, that's just what I have to do for my job. And so I think it's important to create an environment where, like, that can exist alongside, like, happy, healthy employees. Because people aren't happy all the time. People aren't confident all the time. Right.
You did bring up a really interesting point that got glazed over a little, is that that like internalize versus externalize things. It's like when you are a solo employee, and especially a new person or newer to the industry, and you're having this whole internal experience, the anxiety level can get really high. But as soon as you start receiving feedback from your peers and they see you growing and they start helping you out, like, that team atmosphere, I think, takes that individual and really helps them reach a much higher potential, and also helps, like, get the anxiety more externalized, and so that they don't feel like it's them failing, but they can see these exterior components to it that they can have a little bit more control over, rather than just feeling bad about themselves all the time.
For sure. Yeah. And we made sure to ask them about this too, guys. Like, this was a very thorough, like, worksheet. There was, favorite part, least favorite part of the day. And then we asked them to say, what's the most valuable quality that I, as a staff member, bring to the table that you recognize?
And they'd have to, like, look each other in the eyes and answer that.
And I think that is a really hard thing to do, because, like, one, you're coworkers, so maybe you're never thinking about it. But when you're working in the same space as each other every single day, like, it's very valuable to understand, like, what are the things that you're doing really good that, like, I need this person to keep doing because it helps me stay stable, or helps me feel confident.
And that could be like, so-and-so just, like, greets everybody, like, so joyously every single day. And, like, that really helps me. And it, like, also gives them the space for feedback, because usually bigger issues amongst staff, or bigger issues, like, with anxiety, come down to, like, really small workplace interactions and trying to be avoidant of those. And so if we can say, like, hey, like, I don't like it when you leave your stuff out all the time. It feels disrespectful for me that I don't have a space to work in that's tidy. Then, like, those staff members, or that one staff member, might avoid another staff member a little bit less and feel a little bit less anxious about coming into their workspace.
Yeah. Or even just about bringing it up in general.
Yes.
And it's really done wonders. And I think, to touch on Anna's point about external validation, is here as well. One of the things that I created, and guys, this is not like a novel concept, I promise. I didn't just, like, be like, wow, this thing is amazing. Look what came out of my brain. No one's ever done that before. But no, I came up with the way that we could do here was a tiered system, right? And one of the biggest components of that is continuing education, but also specific objective measures for people to hit all the time. And I know that that's been a cornerstone of Anna's developmental program for all of our staff, right? Because she knows what they need to hit and what's going to help them. But it also allows people a little bit more wiggle room in the things that they're confident in, or that they want to gain confidence in, or that they just want to know and learn. Like, they have the opportunity to gain more certifications. And that's where Anna comes in. Like, she'll have meetings with people just to talk about them, about what do you want to do with career? What kind of people do you want to work with? What kind of populations do you want to work with? What type of stuff do you want to get better at? And, like, there's a very real opportunity for them to still advance their career with the items that they want to look forward to in a way that can still be beneficial to chapel training, because we've got this person here that is, like, this is how you do this from like A to B to C all the way down to Z, and these are the steps you can take. And we've got that outline already, and it comes with, you know, more pay, it comes with career advancement, it comes with a whole host of other benefits to people. And I think from the very first few sentences of this podcast was like, one of the best ways to build confidence is, one of the biggest reasons for anxiety is a lack of confidence. And if you know that you have the opportunity to grow and you know exactly what that growth can look like, and then you have a little bit of opportunity to adjust that for your own self, you can build a lot of confidence just by taking those steps and just by coming to Anna, coming to myself and talking about it in a real way. And I think that that's, like I've said this so many times, like I think that tier trainer system has really been something that's been an invaluable tool. I hope I never have to get rid of it. I don't think I ever will. But it's definitely been something that I think has just seen immense like high points for myself and for the staff.
Yeah, I think employee satisfaction.
Yeah, employee satisfaction. Yes. That has been our podcast for today. Hopefully you guys learned something, or maybe you didn't and you just enjoyed listening to our voices. Probably not, but like I said, hope you learned something. We'll be back next month. Last podcast is said next week. Sorry for all of you, like one person that was waiting feverishly, like Cody said we were going to get a podcast next week and we didn't. Like I apologize to you individuals specifically. Everyone else, you knew it was going to be a month. Come on, you know, it was not going to be a week. Anyway, we'll be back next month with another episode of Fitlosophies and something else to talk about. So be sure to like, subscribe, comment your favorite part. Wish Linda a happy birthday. Since we're recording this, even though it's going to come out weeks after the fact, but happy birthday, Linda. And I will see you all next time.